Exodus 20, verse 12. Honor your father and mother, then you will live a long time in the land the Lord your God is giving you.
Thank you very much, Abby. Good morning and happy Mother's Day to you today. We are going to continue working through Exodus as God's people discover God's plan, and at the same time we want to honor some special women in our lives. So today we want to say thank you to biological moms, adopted moms, foster moms, and many of those who don't hold the title of mom, who have still chosen to go out of their way to love and care for children. So now to Exodus. The people of God, they've been enslaved for 400 years, and they finally come out of this time, and they have to figure out what the new normal looks like. They have to figure out what society looks like. They have to figure out what law looks like. And last week we dealt with some of that. The past few weeks we've talked about how they had to figure out where they were going to get food from, and they had to learn to rely on God, and they had to learn to believe and trust in Him and have faith. And last week we talked about how there had to be this leadership principle of understanding that one person can't do it all, and they had to set up kind of a judicial system to have justice in the land so that everyone could figure out what was right and what was wrong. Today we deal not with justice, but with law, and specifically the Ten Commandments. Abby read one that really hits home today on Mother's Day. Honor your father and mother, that you may live long in the land that the Lord your God is about to give you. Honor. It's not just this thing where we say thank you once a year. That's not enough to say what honor is. Honor truly is doing what they have taught you to do. Honor them by living the life that they've taught you to live, by doing what they have taught you to do. It truly, that's what honor looks like. I want to read through the Ten Commandments. And God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God who brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make yourself an image or form of anything in heaven or on earth, beneath or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am jealous, a God punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations for those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and He rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. 10 Commandments. 10 rules for living by. Does your house have rules? We pretend ours does. I think most of us are probably that way. We have rules, we have things that we set up, but I'm guessing your kids are probably a little bit like mine, and they have ways of, you know what, I hear a lot, oh, I forgot. Every time we're running on Grandpa's furniture, I forgot, and you could tell somebody, and 2 seconds later, I forgot. Or maybe it's my middle when he gets in trouble. I not want to hit my brother, Dad. Well, you might not want to, but you just did. And that's the way it goes. You say you don't want to do these things, but you just did. Or maybe like my youngest who gets an evil smirk when he does something naughty, but it's too cute yet to punish too harshly. We give our children rules, just as God gives us rules. And the truth is, sometimes we misunderstand the reason for rules and boundaries in our lives. Most parents' rules are rules that we give our children. A mom's rules are for the safety of her children. Don't play in the street isn't something mom says because she hates fun. That's not why she says don't play in the street. No, rules are meant for safety and the children's best interest, and every once in a while for a parent's sanity. Don't sing that song one more time in this car, or something bad's going to happen, and you're going to wish you were in the street. That's the type of thing. So we make rules. God made rules. Rules that are good for us. No God before me. No worshiping an idol. Don't use the Lord's name in vain. Keep the Sabbath. Honor your father and mother. Don't murder. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't give false testimony. Don't covet. Don't try and take what your neighbor has. And while we do our best to follow the rules, sometimes we're like our kids. I find I'm most like my middle child. I want to not hit my brother. I want to follow the 10 Commandments. So often I've broken them. But that's the way we are. And when we start to look at the 10 Commandments in the light of the New Testament, we find out that Jesus said, not only do you have to keep the 10 Commandments, but you have to keep the spirit of them as well. And so that means you can't just not kill your brother. You have to not hate him. You have to love him. You can't say mean things about him, because that's the spirit of the law. And so all of a sudden, as we look through the 10 Commandments, we find out that we are all sinners. None of us are pure. All of us, like our little kids, forgetting or wanting to do what is right, but already having chosen wrong, or choosing wrong and smiling through it. All of us are like our kids. But in honesty, these are not written only to help us through life. They're also written that we may see them as a goal that we have failed to measure up to. So we may see the 10 Commandments in the right terms. The 10 Commandments aren't there just so that we can say, man, if I keep them, I'm perfect. God knew you wouldn't keep them. God knew you couldn't keep 10, let alone the 613 in the Old Testament. There's 613 laws, 613 commands. He knew you couldn't keep 10. He gave them so that we would realize that we needed some help. That we needed a Savior. The 10 Commandments are there so that we can see that we are not good enough, that we don't measure up, that we need help. No, these stand as a standard to us to show us our need for mercy, our need for a Savior. They stand to give us perspective. And that's often what we need. We need perspective. We need to stand back and be able to see our lives in terms of what God really wants. We need perspective in our lives, and the 10 Commandments provide us with an ideal of what we have fallen short of. They drive us to do better next time because they are the standard. Ultimately, they remind us that no matter how good we aren't good enough without Jesus. No matter how close we think we've gotten, we're not there. We aren't perfect. We aren't His. The 10 Commandments stand as perspective for us. I want to offer some perspective to parents this morning, especially moms who are here this morning. Being a mom is so vastly important and so terribly undervalued in our society. Mom, you will always be mom. Whether your child is 2 or 22 or 52 or beyond that. But there is a finite time when your child is actually a child. Where your kid is actually a kid. And you're probably wondering, why are there ping pong balls on the stage? And maybe this morning you had to even come up and check what those were. Some did. They're ping pong balls. There's 936 of them. I counted. 936 ping pong balls. It seems like a really big number, but really, it's not. 936 is representative. 936 ping pong balls represents 936 weeks that you have from the time your child is born till they turn 18 and move out of your house. 936 all of a sudden got really small, didn't it? 936 is tiny. You start to think about that. Some of you have kids that are graduating. Some of you have kids that have moved out of the house, and you start to think, I have like 3 weeks left. I have 3 weeks that I hold on to. Or maybe you you'd do anything to have a few more weeks. To be able to go back in time and just have a few more weeks with your kid. To be able to stop it and have some more time. 936. 936 weeks is all we get. This small jar is representation. This is 1 year. That's all you get in a year. This many weeks. It's not very many, is it? It starts to put it in perspective that we don't have that much time with our kids. Now, moms, of course, you will still have a relationship with your children after they've grown. You'll still have a relationship after they have left the house, but that relationship is going to grow and it's going to change. For some of you, kids are going to move away for jobs, and you might only see them on holidays. 936 is a big number, but it's not nearly big enough. 936 weeks doesn't seem nearly big enough for us. 936 weeks to make the impact that so desperately needs made. You have 936 weeks to get them from a place where they can't eat on their own, they need you to change their diaper, to the place where they're supposed to be a good member of society and able to handle everything in life. 936, that's it. 936 Sundays, 936 Mondays. That's it. You don't get all this time. By the time your child goes off to school, roughly a third of your weeks are gone. By the time your child goes off to school, 300 of those are gone. When they get their driver's license, there's just 112 left. When they get their driver's license, you only have 112 weeks left with them. And let's face it, the last 286 weeks of those ping pong balls are teenage years. And unfortunately, teens aren't as prone to spending as much time with their parents, don't love and cherish it as much as little ones. Cherish your time. Make the most of it. Teens, they get to the place where they think they know it all, and not realizing for another decade just how much they miss their mom and dad, just how much they should have listened. By the time prom comes around senior year, there's just a few ping pong balls left. By the time we get to that place, there's just a little bit, and it's filled with diplomas and graduation parties. So how do we make the most of the weeks we have? Because, unfortunately, we go through too many weeks where, you know what? This week I was too busy at work. And we waste it. You know what? I'm just tired and I don't have time to really put into parenting. And we waste it. And before we know it, we're doing it left and right. And the weeks pass by. And it's a scary thing when the weeks start to pass by. And we realize that we haven't poured into our kid the way that we wanted to. Big moments are great. We think about life in terms of big moments. But more than the vacations you took or how nice of a car you bought them, your children will remember the small moments. Vacations, even if you took one a year, for a whole week every year, that's 18. 18 in the span of 936 is nothing. Vacations aren't all that there is to it. But what if you took the little things that you did every day? The things that you did over and over again. The family meals, even if you just sat down once a week, which I would recommend doing more than that. But even if it was just once a week, that's 936 meals you spent with them. And that makes a difference. What if it was the little things like the hug that you always gave, even when they didn't want it? The little things. What if it was always telling them you were proud of them day in and day out? What if even when they had troubles, even when they misbehaved, you reinforced just how much you loved them? Day in and day out. Over and over again. Those are weeks that won't be wasted. Those are weeks that won't be thrown away. You have 936 weeks before your child has grown. 936 Sundays. Will you make sure they know God? 936, I promise you this, if you don't value church and growing in your relationship with Jesus, they won't either. 936. 936 Mondays. 936 new weeks. About half of those will be spent at school. About half of those will be spent at school. 936 fresh starts. Will they feel your love and encouragement? 936 Tuesdays. I wonder how many activities you'll get them involved in or what things they will take interest in. Maybe it'll be sports, maybe it'll be band, maybe it'll be academic competition. Who knows what things they'll be interested in. 936 Tuesdays. I would guess that far less than 100 times you'll have an opportunity to go and watch them and support them. Will you make the most of those? 936 Wednesdays. How many nights of helping with homework will there be? Will you take time to teach them beyond what they learn at school? Will you invest in them over and over again? Will you make sure that you're there for them? 936 Thursdays. Some days are going to be good and some days are going to be bad. Some days are going to be so rough that you just wish that you could go back and start it again. Some days you get to celebrate. And others, you have to go back and try and mend what's broken. 936 Fridays, and the last 200 they're probably going to want to spend with their friends. The last 200 of those Fridays they're going to want to go out, they're going to want to be with friends. Don't work so hard and so late that you don't have time. Because the weeks, they just slip away. 936 Saturdays. Will you take time to go to the park? Will you put down your phone? Will you shut off the TV and spend it with your child? Before it's all done, some of those 936 will be spent staring down at their little face. That's what we start with, isn't it? When we hold them and they're just that cutest thing you've ever seen and all that you've ever wanted. You spend it looking at their face. Others of those 936 weeks you're going to find you're watching Sesame Street. And you're going to find that you know characters on the Disney Channel better than you know what's going on in your favorite TV program. Other weeks you're going to find that you're building Legos or dressing up Barbie. Other times you're going to be reading to them and telling them stories, or maybe for the first time you get to listen to them read. And they open a book and you sit on your lap and they read you a story for the first time. Field trips and days at the park. Others are going to be spent with lunches and suppers gathered at the table. Other weeks you'll be shopping for cool shirts for back to school. You might talk to them about girls. Hopefully you talk to them about God. You might help them to recover from their first broken heart or a bully's mean words at school. Letting them chauffeur you around as they get their learner's permit. How are you going to spend those weeks? Getting them ready for their first dance, planning their graduation party, driving them to college for the first time. Moms, God chose you to tend this garden. God gave you the gift of your children. He picked you to take care of them, and they are precious to Him, and He said, they're yours. So how will you spend your weeks? Will you waste them? Or will you find that you've poured them all into one amazing human being? Will you pour them into your children's lives? Will you spend week after week investing in this child? God chose you, Mom, to make the best of 936 weeks, to take them from a baby in your arms to a man or a woman ready to live a life of grace. Don't waste them. Pour them in. Pour those weeks one after another into your child. It's what God has created you for. And it is a great blessing. There's nothing else on earth like it. You've been chosen. You have the opportunity to make the biggest difference. I love the church, and the church makes a huge difference in people's lives. But ultimately, they will decide what they believe based upon your home. How you've lived, how you've taught them, the things they've seen you do. Moms, we are so grateful for you because your job is so important. Moms, We celebrate you this morning for what you do. As the praise team comes up, I hope that you know how important your job is, moms. I hope you feel appreciated. And that goes for moms who are biological, adopted, foster. That goes for the women who choose to invest in our children, teachers and daycare workers, and those who just simply say, I want to be a part of a child's life and choose to make a difference. We want to thank you this morning. We will, at the end of the service, have something special for you all. I'll say that during announcements. At this time, if you would stand with us. Thank you.